Now, there's a new book about the long and bloody conflict in eastern Congo. It is called Dancing in the Glory of Monsters, The Collapse of the Congo and the Great War of Africa. Author Jason Stearns discussed the war and his experiences in the Congo with Mwamoyo Hamza of VOA's Swahili service.
Tell us, what's this book about?
The book is an attempt to explain, well, there's two basic objectives of the book. One is to just explain what happened during the war. This was one of the most complex and tragic conflicts of our time, involving 9 African countries, 40 plus rebel groups, and resulted in the loss of over 5 million lives. So on the one hand, it's just to tell that story. On the other hand, it's more of almost a philosophical question, which is, why have we cared so little about this conflict that's been, on the one hand, so tragic and so brutal? And on the other hand, how did the people who were involved justify this violence to themselves?
Rape has been one of the most prominent features of this war, and it has been very consistent.
Armed groups carry out sexual violence for different reasons. And it's very difficult to know when they rape for what reason. Certainly we know that sometimes they rape as a tactic of intimidation or punishment. So if I am one armed group and I'm trying to occupy this territory and you are another armed group challenging me, then because it's guerrilla style fighting, instead of fighting with the armed group that's difficult to get your hands on, you punish the population that you think is allied to that armed group. And often that punishment happens through pillage, but often also through rape. So there's that kind of instrumental rape, punishing or intimidation of the population. Then there's also the kind of rape where armed groups force their combatants to carry out very gruesome, very public rapes as a way of disciplining the combatants. It's almost a way of socializing the combatants into the armed group. And removing them from the society that they came from, which is one of the reasons I personally think that you see so many gang rapes in the Congo, in public.
And you write in your book that the Congo War is a war within wars. Can you explain that?
It's like babushka dolls that you find. We have a larger babushka doll. Inside you have smaller dolls. And the Congo War is kind of like that. You go and you research, and in the beginning you think, oh, this was a war between groups backed by Rwanda and groups backed by the Congo. And then you go to the provinces and you find out that those Rwandan groups were fighting amongst each other. And then you find out, even as you go to the village, that amongst each other, they were fighting amongst each other. So I think what had happened, in many ways, the story of the Congo War is a story of the decay of the Congolese states under Mobutu, but even before him, the Belgian colony. It's a very weak state. And the fact that it's a weak state, with a weak army and weak state institutions, has allowed a lot of local grievances to be expressed in a very aggressive, brutal, military fashion almost.
And in light of the upcoming elections in November this year in the Democratic Republic of Congo, what are your predictions as far as ending the conflict in Eastern Congo?
Well, let me first say that the elections are going to be probably more contentious than the elections in 2006. More contentious in the sense that the incumbent, Joseph Kabila, who won in 2006, was favored to win. And I think the elections were relatively free and fair, and I think that, even in a 100% free and fair election, he would have won. Whereas this time around, the incumbent, Joseph Kabila, is going to face a much harder time. I think many of the areas where he carried the election 90% of the vote or 99% of the vote in the East are now very upset with Kabila because of the extreme violence that has continued in the East. He won the election based on his peacemaking credentials. And many people now cast that into doubt, in the East in particular. So you're going into an electoral process where the incumbent is not as likely to win, or maybe not likely to win at all. That is a different kind. He's going to have a different attitude towards these elections than in 2006. And I think that the danger of vote rigging and intimidation is going to be large.
Author Jason Stearns' new book is called Dancing in the Glory of Monsters, The Collapse of the Congo and the Great War of Africa, and he spoke with Mwamoyo Hamza of VOA Swahili service.